Some debates stay civil, others get heated, but one thing remains the same. You won't want to miss this. It was absolutely wild. Joe Rogan isn't known for playing along with woke culture, and he's made that crystal clear over the years. He's bold, unapologetic, and always ready to challenge the nonsense. So what happens when a guest steps into his arena and tries to drag the conversation straight into woke territory? Chaos. That's what happens, and it's exactly what went down when one daring guest made that very mistake. Let's set the scene. This wasn't just any episode.
By the way, I'm glad you're better. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
it only lasted a day.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you, too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing... That's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
This was the day Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's top medical correspondent, appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience. It was already big news, a major media figure walking into Rogan's territory. This moment was electric from the start. Joe, never one to hold back, came ready with facts and receipts. And when Gupta tried to slide into the conversation with calm smiles and vague answers, Joe went straight for the truth. The tension exploded when Joe brought up something CNN had been pushing, the narrative that he took horse dewormer. During his bout with COVID, he wasn't having it, and he let it be known. Joe stared across the table and dropped the bombshell. "You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad," he said. When Gupta mentioned being happy Joe recovered. Then he hit him with the truth. "The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication." Gupta looked stunned. He didn't expect Joe to come at him so directly, but Joe wasn't done. Not even close. He was just getting started, and the studio air practically cracked with tension. Joe made it clear this wasn't a joke, and it wasn't just media spin. It was a full-on calculated smear. He said, "It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that they're conscious of." He wasn't yelling, but the words cut like steel. Gupta tried to respond, but Joe kept pressing him. Calm, relentless, sharp. "They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine," Joe said, calling out CNN's twisting of the facts. And then Joe laid it out with brutal clarity. "I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous." Even with the censors in place, his fury was clear.
Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize.
the Nobel Prize in 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is...
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine, like here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got
This
it
is
with
right
you.
here. Somebody gave it to me.
The attack on his character wasn't just false. It was dangerous. Joe didn't let up. "Don't you think a lie like that is dangerous?" he said, looking Gupta in the eye. "When you know that they know they're lying." You could hear a pin drop. But CNN didn't care. They ran with a wild, distorted narrative, painting Joe like he was sneaking into a barn for livestock meds. It was ridiculous, and Joe wasn't about to let it go. The conversation wasn't even about whether the drug worked anymore. It had turned into something much bigger, a full-blown battle over truth, media integrity, and accountability. Gupta's smile faded. His calm face started to crack, and finally he admitted it. They shouldn't have said that. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and Joe had already called it out in front of millions. That wasn't journalism. That was a hit piece, and Joe was right to call it out for what it was. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, he said, what are they telling us about Russia? About Syria? That question hit like a hammer. It was a moment of complete exposure.
Can I just come back to the one I want to talk about? Two things on the ledger.
You have, before we get to that, does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before coming on your podcast.
But they did it with such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
They did. I watched.
You watched?
I watched.
You watched? No, I don't think there's
yes,
glee.
They did.
No one takes...
Joe Rogan says he has COVID, taking livestock drug despite warnings. Yeah.
Jamie had to pull this up.
You want to play it? But my point is, you're working for a news organization. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news?
Joe wasn't just defending himself, he was defending truth. He stood tall while the network tried to make him look crazy, and now he was flipping the script in real time. Most people would have backed down, but not Joe. He stood his ground and made Gupta face the reality of what his own network had done. There was nowhere to hide. The episode ended without a shouting match, without insults, but with Sanjay visibly shaken and clearly defeated. The internet exploded instantly. You won't believe what happened when Adam Conover stepped into Joe Rogan's studio thinking he could outsmart him with a bundle of woke slogans. From the second he started speaking, it was clear he had no idea what he was walking into. Adam came armed with the usual talking points, claiming that trans athletes should be allowed to compete based on how they identify, not based on their biology. He presented it as if it were a simple matter of inclusivity, brushing aside decades of athletic standards and biological reality like it was nothing. With a smug grin, Adam said, "We could sit here and talk for hours about hormones, but I'm not an expert." That's right. He openly admitted he had no expertise on the issue he was passionately defending. It was the kind of confession that made jaws drop. Then came the classic woke cop-out. I think sports should just be more inclusive. As if fairness and competition didn't matter anymore. Joe's expression didn't change, but you could feel the energy shift. The hunter had just spotted weakness. Joe leaned forward, calm but focused, and dropped a truth bomb that shattered Adam's argument instantly.
As far as trans athletes go, you know, we could sit here and talk for 3 hours about like all the different ways that hormones might affect your body and might not affect your body. And I'm not an expert on that, and I don't want to claim to be, right? But a sports with trans athletes who are competing with with their gender, right? That is a sporting world that I'm more interested in, right? And I think we should find a way to make that happen.
He reminded everyone that in almost every physical sport, men and women are separated for a reason, and that reason is performance, not feelings. Joe then asked the question Adam couldn't escape. When a biological male transitions into a female, do they still retain physical advantages? The air got thick with tension. You could almost hear Adam's confidence crumbling. Without waiting for an answer, Joe brought out the receipts, examples of biological males who had transitioned and then shattered records in women's sports within months of entering. The facts were clear, and the silence was deafening. Joe wasn't trying to be cruel. He was trying to be honest. He laid it out plainly. If you're a woman who trained her whole life and someone who lived as a man for 30 years suddenly competes against you and dominates. Is that fair? The question hit like a hammer. No one could deny the physical advantage at that point. Adam sat there, blinking, trying to recover. But it was too late. The debate was done, and the scoreboard wasn't in his favor. Joe had stayed grounded in reality, while Adam spiraled into hypotheticals. Clips of the interview spread like wildfire across social media. People were stunned, not just by what Joe said, but by how effortlessly he said it. He didn't just win, he dominated. The internet lit up with reactions. Memes, recaps, and breakdowns flooded every platform. One viral post said, "Adam Conover just learned what happens when you try woke logic on Joe Rogan. You get buried." This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a collapse in front of millions.
Well, I disagree, and I've.
What do you disagree about?
I've already. Well, my main point being the one that I already made, right? That like, I don't think that there is such a thing as a perfectly level playing field. I think we decide what kind of playing field we want to have.
Sure, but we do make the distinction where we don't allow men to compete in women's divisions.
And I think that that distinction may be breaking down a bit, right? And I think it may be time to break down that distinction.
And Joe, he didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His message was loud and clear. Bring facts or prepare to be exposed. Joe Rogan had done it again, calmly, logically, and completely. Adam came to lecture and left speechless, and that was only the beginning. Oi Behar, joy. Behar didn't appear on Joe's show, but that didn't stop her from taking a swing at him, live on The View. She stood in front of the cameras with a confident smirk and declared that Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Yes, that was her argument. The audience laughed, the co-hosts chuckled, and Joy acted like she had just uncovered a massive scandal. But it wasn't long before the entire segment collapsed under the weight of its own ridiculousness. "I checked it," she said proudly. "He believes dragons walked the earth." The problem? That wasn't what Joe said at all. Not even close. What Joy was referring to was a conversation Joe had on his podcast, where he speculated about ancient legends of giant lizards and flying creatures that inspired old myths. It was a thoughtful, imaginative discussion, not a belief in literal fire-breathing monsters. But Joy twisted it, stripped it of context, and presented it as fact, just to try and discredit Joe's entire platform. And once again, Joe wasn't going to let that slide. On his podcast, Joe pulled up the actual clip they were referring to and broke it down line by line. He made it crystal clear he never claimed to believe in real dragons living alongside humans. Joe even laughed at the absurdity of it all. "I said maybe the legends came from people seeing huge lizards like Komodo dragons or crocodiles and turning that into folklore," he explained.
That's why people like our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But
we're checked by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if we're wrong, we have, the legal note here.
The human legal
But we went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He believes in dragons? He believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did. And he also thinks that dragons, like dinosaur-y type of animals, roamed the earth when people did.
Viewers were stunned, not at Joe, but at the View's blatant dishonesty. They saw the original conversation, and it was nothing like what Joy had claimed on air. Commenters flooded the internet. Joy Behar just made up a dragon story to attack Joe Rogan, and he pulled the receipts. One post read, another added, "They're not even trying to be honest anymore." Joy tried to pivot after the backlash, suggesting she was just joking, but nobody was buying it. The damage was done, and Joe, once again, came out looking like the only adult in the room. And just when you thought the drama couldn't get any wilder, enter Graham Hancock, the author and researcher who's made it his mission to challenge mainstream archaeology. Now, Joe has long been fascinated with Graham's theory that an advanced human civilization existed during the Ice Age and passed on knowledge to so-called primitive humans after a cataclysmic event. The idea was bold, mysterious, and totally outside the academic norm. When Netflix released Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse, the backlash from the archaeology community was instant and furious. They accused him of spreading pseudoscience, dangerous misinformation, and even labeled him with extreme terms like racist and anti-Semitic without any evidence. So when Graham came back to Joe's podcast and brought that open letter from the Society for American Archaeology, you could practically feel the heat through the screen. Joe couldn't believe the tone of the letter. They're trying to cancel you and label you a threat just for questioning the narrative, he asked, shaking his head. And Graham confirmed it. They wanted Netflix to slap a warning label on his series, calling it science fiction, not because it had been proven wrong, but because it challenged their authority.
Go back to that. Why would
and
someone...
Graham, you're so
Flint.
much more of a celebrity than me.
Here's Flint. Netflix, correct. I'm sorry.
on.
I'm sorry that I am, Flint. That's not really my problem. Hey,
saying I have
Netflix.
this power.
Hey, Netflix, correct your mistake and reclassify Ancient Apocalypse as fantasy. Netflix corrects your mistakes. This is you pushing this, Flint. And then the general media
tiny
fishy
Twitter
Netflix
accounts?
show, Ancient Apocalypse, is the most dangerous show on Netflix. You used the word dangerous
Where?
repeatedly in your conversation piece.
I think that the way that you refer to archaeology as, you say that you're number one enemy of archaeology and things like that, you are promoting people to dislike what we do. We are doing our jobs. No, you started off Ancient Apocalypse by calling us patronizing and arrogant.
Archaeologists see me as public enemy number one.
Joe read parts of the letter out loud and was stunned. Misogynistic, racist, chauvinistic, he shouted. This is how they respond to a theory? With character assassination? Then came the kicker. Graham pointed out that these same critics never invited him to a public debate or rebutted his claims directly. They just tried to smear and silence him instead. Joe couldn't stand the hypocrisy. You've got a show that's making people curious about history, and they want to shut it down, he said. That's not science, that's censorship. Things only got more heated when archaeologist Flint Dibble joined the discussion remotely. The moment he saw the letter Graham brought, he got visibly defensive, and the tension shot through the roof. Flint started rambling about dangerous narratives and accused Graham of being more interested in fame than facts. You're a celebrity, Flint snapped. People listen to you. But Graham wasn't rattled. That's not my problem, he replied coolly. Your job is to bring better arguments, not throw insults. And Joe? He sat back and watched it all unfold like a heavyweight match. The most telling moment came when Flint demanded that Netflix correct their mistake and relabel Graham's series as fantasy. That's right. A credentialed archaeologist tried to erase a theory just because it didn't align with his worldview.
The influence of Flint and his colleagues on media and culture. And again, we've got the Society for American Archaeology, 5,000 members. Flint is one. Flint's co-author, John Hoops, actually helped to write this letter for the Society of American Archaeology. They're saying that I embolden extreme voices that misrepresent archaeological knowledge in order to spread false historical narratives that are overtly misogynistic, chauvinistic, racist, and anti-Semitic. I mean, you apply those labels to somebody and you're going to get that person hated by a lot of people.
Whole ball.
I did not write that.
No, your co-author, John Hoops, wrote it. We urge Netflix to add disclaimers that the content is unfounded. They want it to be called science fiction. In other words, that's a very clever way of cancelling me.
Joe's eyebrows shot up. So instead of challenging the ideas, You just want them hidden? He asked. What are you so afraid of? Flint stumbled, unable to answer, and the longer the exchange went on, the clearer it became. This wasn't about science anymore. It was about control. Neither side backed down, but the public saw the difference. Graham had theories, evidence, and questions. Flint had anger, labels, and institutional fear. When the episode ended, people flooded online forums with praise for Graham and fury toward the academic bullies who tried to cancel him. Joe once again stood firmly with open discussion, and the audience respected it. And that's what makes Joe Rogan so dangerous to the establishment. He invites the debate, challenges the spin, and refuses to let fear dictate the conversation. From Adam Conover's collapse, to Sanjay Gupta's on-air reckoning, to Joy Behar's failed smear, and the Graham Hancock firestorm, one thing stayed the same through it all. Joe Rogan stood strong. Not because he's perfect, but because he asks the questions others won't. And when the answers don't hold up, he exposes them for the world to see. So the next time someone tries to corner Joe Rogan with weak arguments and phony outrage, just remember what happened to the last four who tried. They failed miserably,